What's up, everyone? This is Ignatius. Today, I'm bringing to you a video on an incomplete concept on a build that I've been working on for the last 3 days. This is going to be kind of like an unedited, cut and dry, here's the state of me and my build. And I'll give a little introduction that explains why I'm making this video and what the purpose of it is, which will also help explain to you whether or not you want to watch it. All right, so first of all, this is the Animate Guardian of Smiting build, also known as Bob. This build is getting prolific this season. It is a very effective, unethical DPS effective hit point damage build that is likely to be nerfed in several ways after this season. However, I really wanted to play it this season because it's really fun. The interactions are really cool. Letting Bob run around and kill a whole screen is super enjoyable, and it's like peak PoE 1 type experience. So I got it going about 3 days ago. I'm now at level 99. My slash play is probably a little inflated, maybe by 5 to 10 hours because I sit AFK a lot. But I would say it takes about 20 to 30 hours to get to where I'm at now. And I'd say my budget currently is at about like 300 to 400 div. Let me go straight into the intro because I wrote down some things that I really want to mention as sort of like a caveat or like an important things to know about this build. So first of all, I'm new to this build, 3 days new. I am not an expert. This is a very complex build. The interactions are very specific, and it took me a while to wrap my head around them. If you're brand new to the game, I would not recommend it. There is a guy on PoE Ninja who is like number 3 Delve. Let me see. Baby on board. He's number 5 Delve, and he's 1.9 mil EHP. And this is where I got the inspiration from. So I'll link his character profile in the chat. And basically all the ideas that my game froze, that I'm taking advantage of in my approach to the build are straight from this POB and the numbers, especially the EHP numbers that it reflected. I am probably, so as I go through this whole explanation, there's a few things in here where I'm not totally clear, and I'll call those out, but I may also scuff my understanding of something in here, and I apologize ahead of time. But the interactions in the build are specific, they're confusing, and they're delicate. If you make the wrong decisions with items or building Bob, there's high punishment. You could brick your Bob, or you could lose tons of currency in buying the wrong things. I've started streaming the build, and so a lot of people are out there asking, like, what is this? How does this work? I did look at other resources on this build, and I honestly don't think they do a fantastic job of explaining the build to like a new player or somebody who isn't aware of the interactions in the build. And so I'm trying to kind of bridge that gap and have a foundation to send people to who watch my stream who are asking, how do I do this as well? Also, if they don't nerf this build too heavily, this will be my league start for next season. I'm just kind of obsessed with the archetype. My head is exploding with all sorts of ideas for how to kind of league start it, early map it, late map it, that kind of thing. And then also, please know that what I'm showing here is not a league start build. It is not an early late mapping build or a budget build. This is just an in-game build. Roll a gladiator to level like 90 with 400 div, and you could maybe switch over. The POBs I'm looking at on Ninja are like 4+ mirrors, so I suppose I'm budget compared to them. But I plan to get up into multi-mirror tier. And yeah, that's kind of the introduction. Hopefully like a helpful caveat so you understand where I'm coming from with this build and what I'm presenting to you. Okay, part 1. What is Animate Guardian and how does it work? So it was brand new to me. You see him here. They call him Bob. We call him Bob. And here's the gem. We're doing Animate Guardian of Smiting, which makes Bob use Smite of Divine Judgment, which has some nice AoE buffs and some lightning convert, some other really good things that make his clear fantastic. He also has a more modifier to damage sitting on the gem. And basically, you animate Bob by using weapons or armor. And so what that means is you can give Bob, and you can see he's a floating set of items. He is not like his own ghost. He's just a floating set of items. And so the items he has, you can see he has on a weapon, a shield, a body armor, a helmet, a boot, and a glove. And that's it. He doesn't get to wear a belt. He doesn't get to wear rings or amulet. He doesn't get flasks, things like that. He's just weapon and armor specific. and you build him one at a time. So you set the skill up on your skill bar. I wouldn't put it on your main skill bar because you don't want to accidentally summon Bob on a bad item. But set Bob up on your skill bar, drop an item that you want Bob to have, and I'll show the items that are on my Bob right now, and then click the skill on the item. Now here's where there's high risk, high reward. Let's say you summon Bob on a 1 mirror Garb of the Ephemeral armor, and then later on you accidentally resummon him on a different armor. Your Garb of the Ephemeral is gone from your Bob, I think. Also, let's say you summon Bob on a 300 divine pair of gloves, and then you have gloves that you want to improve, and so you want to put new gloves on Bob. Well, you can't get the old ones back, so it's a one-time consume the item, apply it to Bob, and that's really important. Some other things about the gem. So you'll notice that when you see Bob up here, he's got all these supports, right? I think it's 10. And you see Bob down here in the skill bar. Each little letter is the support. And that is coming, one, from the Animate Guardian Imbue. You can see I have increased AoE on him, which is just like a cheap option. It's not actually the best. Over here we have the Squire. And the Squire applies these gems to this link. That's the point of the shield, basically. And then on the sword, we have a bunch of socketed gems supported by modifiers. These are not necessarily the perfect ones. You can look at like the multi-mirror goat guy for the perfect ones. But I just went to trade and bought some that were decent and did some micro crafting on them and recombinating, things like that, and got to where I am with what I'm doing now. All right, so the gem, the imbue, the sword socket buffs, and then Squire shield. These are all the things making Bob, along with all of his items, really powerful. A couple other things that are going on with Bob. One, throughout mapping, we flame link him. If you don't know about flame link adds fire damage based on your max life. Not Bob's, but yours. And so we flame link him. We have things that are increasing buff duration. So you can see the timers here, but it's ticking very slowly. So flame link lasts a good amount of time. And then Bob is wearing a sword, which also applies our max life as damage. So this Grey Wind, I believe this is new this season, attacks with this weapon have added fire damage equal to 14% of players' max life. So if you summon Bob with this, he absorbs that. And then just real quick, Bob's using Crown of Ice, which makes spell damage increases and reductions apply to attack. And then he has Wrath Pith, which gives him spell damage based on my max life again. Garb of the Ephemeral, which has some incredible stuff with divinity charges and action speed locking. You can roll some nice implicits on it. And then Foulborn 7 League is best in slot. I've got like some other action speed stuff and res on there. And then gloves with fire res, chaos res, and some other cool stuff. So that is sort of the start to end to how Bob is who he is. And if you didn't notice, as you scale life, you inherently scale Bob's damage and output. The last thing is we're using this transfusion support. I assume this is new. Supported skills cost life instead of mana, so it's like a life tap. A nearby minion gives a soul for every 200 life you spend on upfront costs with supported skills. So we link this with an automation, Convocation, which is kind of pointless. We're just recalling Bob constantly. And then a Corrupting Fever, which is constantly applying a damage to us. You can see my health bar going down and up from recovery. But it's giving Bob full Soul Eater stacks. And I've got this locked in at level 10 right now. Ideally, we'll get it up to level 21 and then recover, even though we're so high because our life pool is high and our recovery is based on life pool. All right. So that's part one. That's how Bob works. That took me hours to figure out, watching videos and doing some testing in game and making one mistake. So hopefully that is helpful to you. All right, part two. What is the defensive layer and how is it so good? So you'll notice that in this goated guy, Neurotox, his effective HP is 1.9 million. And that's what really caught my attention when I was looking for builds to try. In my own POB, so I'm not totally decked out. I would say I'm at about 30 to 50% strength. Bob's at 45 mil DPS according to POB. I'm not totally sure how accurate this is. Nobody knows what Bob's really doing in game. There's no information in the game on what he's wearing and what he's doing, other than what you know you gave him. And then my own EHP is already 1 million on a 300 to 400 divine budget. And the way we're doing this is initially not very complex, and then later on is super complex. So the first layer of defense is lucky max block on Gladiator. Gladiator basically exists only for this node. Chance to block attack or spell damage is lucky if you've blocked recently. It's so much so the only node that not only do we take a bloodline, but we also don't even go to another major node. We just go here and here, which is just crazy, right? And then we go with Versatile Combatant so that it is easy to max out the spell block. And then when that roll is lucky, which my POB assumes that it is because we're constantly blocking, our effective block chance is 91 and 91. So that, if you know anything about block, that is attack and spell. Almost nothing gets through. Then when things do get through, we have Coward's Chains. Damage of enemies hitting you is unlucky, while you are cursed with vulnerability, and you are cursed with vulnerability, and you count as on full life. We do a lot of bleed mitigation for this reason. So I believe I'm at like 101 bleeding avoidance, and you'll want to do that as well if you're paying attention to your defensive layer. And then lastly, in addition to life stacking everywhere we possibly can and counteracting every downside that comes with all of the life stacking we're trying to do, and there are a lot of downsides on some of these jewels and things. I won't go into each one in particular. But we are taking the Chaos Bloodline for Corruption's Embrace. And this also gets extremely tricky. So we're going for the last line there. It's most important. You have Sacrifice of Blood if you have 8 corrupted items equipped. And what this says is life recovery from regeneration grants you a blood barrier when you're on full life. The blood barrier reminds me of Guard. And basically, you just take no damage while blood barrier is active, and your regeneration applies to the blood barrier at full and applies to you at half. So if for some reason your barrier does get ticked, your bar will start regenerating back at full rate. But while it is not getting ticked, your regeneration applies to the barrier at full rate. And this, in a way, counteracts the downside from Dissolution of Flesh, which gives us, 29, 30% more max life. And then the blood barrier also scales with our max life. So I'm at about 15K. I think Goated Bob is at like 25K. So you can see how it gets a lot more powerful. And then all of that life stacking applies not only to the blood barrier and the defensive layer, but as we talked about, it all scales Bob's damage. So it all kind of works together. There's a ton of other interactions going on here. You just have to look at the entirety of the tree to, start to wrap your mind around all that. And as I'm streaming and in Discord, if you have specific questions, feel free to drop them to me. And if I don't even know the answer, I'll go out and try to find the answer for you. Or maybe I know enough about it now that I could provide an answer for you. But that is essentially the defensive layer. It's max block. Eventually, for me, it will be max res. I think I'm at 85 with or 87 with a ruby flask, all res. And then, Progenesis is there. As soon as you add the Progenesis, you'll notice you basically never take damage anymore. It's kind of ridiculous. The only thing getting me right now is Caustic Ground and Poison. I'm going to work on Poison duration with my jewels, and then Caustic Ground probably will be, unnoticeable from there. Some of the items, so to talk about some of the items, I'm not going to go through like how to craft each one, but I am going to talk about the purpose of each one so you can understand what you're looking at if you venture out to try and work on this build. The one-hander can be any base. It doesn't have to be this base. You'll see this base often. The attribute requirements are friendly, and it's an easy one for various reasons. I think it's going to be the most common one you're going to see on Bob builds, but you'll see Bob builds with light claws and stuff. The only thing you care about is this supported gems tag. You basically just want to be thoughtful about what gems are useful, and also if there's gems that replace the normal links that you're using, and then you don't need to use the normal links. But that's essentially the one-hander. If you're interested in learning about how to craft this, you can DM me on Discord we can start a thread on it in one of the channels. It is a rather tedious craft, I suppose, with a lot of RNG, but it can save you a lot of money because like a really good one is like multi-100 div. This one right here you're looking at, it was about 20 div to assemble. So not too bad at all in my opinion. I will say that you'll see in my POB I'm running Annihilation support. That's because I've just been mapping with Bob exclusively. I've been doing Breach, I've been doing Harvest and Strongboxes. It's all so much fun with Bob. And this gives Bob some Explodey, so that way we have even more AoE clear. And I'm stacking AoE everywhere I can with Bob all over the gear, so that way he clears the screen beautifully. The helmet's pretty simple. Some cool mods here and there. Biggest thing is your Link minions take 72% less damage. That's ridiculous. That's 72% DR. And then it has Headhunter on it, but it's Headhunter for Bob. So on killing a rare monster, a random linked minion gains modifiers for 60 seconds. Bob's our only minion, so it goes. We run combs. Get as much max life as you can. There's some with enchants that, get up to like 1400 and they're multi-mirror, but, you can settle shop for those. Glove and boots, you'll kind of see what's going on. The biggest thing is that they need to be corrupted. Like, in order to hit the blood barrier, you have to corrupt 8 items. The belt will be corrupted. Combs will be corrupted. Squire will be corrupted. And the helmet will be corrupted. So that's 4. So then among these 6 slots, you need to pick 4 more. This, I believe, is the most risky corruption, and so I don't touch it. This is eventually going to be a simplex, which I do not want to corrupt because it's so expensive. And right now it's bone meld, which is just I went out and found a substitute. It seems to be working just fine. And it was like, just a handful of chaos to get a good corrupted version online. So that leaves us with the boots and the gloves, which both need to be corrupted. And that is where, you want to be really choosy about doing some micro crafting to set up multiple bases that you can use. Probably the riskiest part of corrupting either of these is that you need +2 max fire res on the boots in order to basically make, I think it's called melding of the flesh, work the way we want it to work. See if I can find it. That's my watchers. I think I have it down here. Where are you melding? Right here? My gosh, I'm going crazy. There it is. So this reduces your all res by 70, which is crazy. Reduces your max res by 4, which is crazy. However, elemental reses are capped by your highest, and we're going to go for fire around the board because we're on this side of the tree, and it just makes sense, and you need +2 max fire here. +2 max fire here is an exquisite implicit. So then, if you know how that system works, recrafting and recorrupting these boots can get expensive, so be careful there. The other option is to go for both rings and leave the boots alone. And the gloves are honestly not really that expensive. You can buy some, fix the implicits just a bit. Mine aren't even that great. Those are both lessers. And then, YOLO corrupt them. But yeah, you need 8 of these items to be corrupted, and that's really important. Another thing that's really important is that you probably are going to want to run an unset ring. I'm going to say it's not required because you could realistically drop Frostblink on this build and be just fine. If you're in Delve, I really think Frostblink is a requirement, but if you're not in Delve, I don't think we need to see Frostblink as a requirement. So that's what's going on there. Talk really quickly about the jewels, so that way they make sense. Foulborn Red Dream, passives granting fire res or all res, increase max life at half value. So we socket it here. We convert all these strength nodes to fire res, and so that they also give 3% increase max life. We have resist nodes up here. We have a resist node here. You can kind of see how this ends up giving us an incredible amount of max life. If I pull it off, it's about a 2k difference, which again, that's defenses and damage. Other jewel things, we talked about melding of the flesh. I talked a bit about dissolution of the flesh. And then outside of that, it's all basic jewels, which have % max life, % max fire res. Right now, my basics are mostly rare, and they are fixing my other resists in a way. We're going to go with the resist implicit here, potentially more resists on one of the rings. And then we're going to do an adorned setup where every jewel looks like this. 2 max fire res, 7% max life. Goated Bob has 100% adorned. That's a mirror. I'm going with an 86% adorned, which is a solid breakpoint on the max life if you do the math. All 3 cluster jewels are the same. Raise and Pillage, Renewal, Vicious Bite. These give you nice crit buff and double damage / regen buffs for Bob, and also enable you to get all of these basic jewel sockets. Try to go for resists where you can. Resists get really tight on the, or sorry, I'm saying resists, I meant attributes. Try to go for attributes on the cluster jewels where you can. Attributes get really tight on this build because we end up tattooing everything we can find for other regeneration and resist base values that we need. Part 3 was what else could be scaled. I talked about the adorned. I'm running the Bone Melt. Obviously, it's fine. I'm at 1 million plus EHP, but if you want to get up into this 1.9 basically doubled and scale the max life and Bob damage even further, you would go with something like this, which is, if you don't know about simplexes, it's basically like a very costly high-end craft that has a lot of risk reward in the RNG moments of the craft. If you were to go out here and buy one of these, it's a multi-hundred div purchase for sure. And I've basically avoided all the multi-hundred div purchases in my current setup to keep the budget, about half a mirror or less, which I feel like is approachable for me anyway. A couple other buffs would be a Giga Combs. Getting a Giga Combs is really tricky. You basically want to hit a Tailoring Orb enchant that has explicit life modifier magnitudes like this one, but you can't use Tailoring Orbs on Combs, so you have to actually use the Tailoring Orb on a Glorious Plate base, and then scour the base after you hit the Tailoring Orb, obviously quality it and fix it or whatever you want to do, then use an Orb of Chance plus an Omen of Fortune, which is about a 10 div roll, to possibly roll it up to a Combs, and that is how you get the Giga Combs. Again, it's a multi-hundred div craft, and I've avoided it for now. And again, better one-handed support links and a better Bob imbue. So these are not best in slot, my socketed gem links. They're just adding value for cheap, and this is not at all the best imbue. It's just added value for cheap. If you want to get like an Uber / Giga Delve setup going, you work in some Fire Pen all around the board. You take out the Annihilation support. You make sure you have critical damage support and a critical chance support to get Bob's crit up higher. I think in my setup, Bob's crit chance is 47. I don't really know how it knows. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe he's higher. That's one thing I wish we had in this game was like, what's going on with Bob? There's like no way to find out, which is so absurd. But yeah, that's just how it works. So yeah, that would be the other way to scale. And again, all 4 of these scales are multi-hundred div scales, so I've avoided them. If you combined all 4 together and really min-max them, I think it's like 2 to 3 mirrors of add-ons, maybe even more depending on prices and some give and take that you do with Adorned, things like that. Finally, as a conclusion, I am going to aim to league start this build next season. They are going to nerf this build somehow, I'm sure. I've heard actually in the upcoming Gauntlet event that it is already basically made illegal in the Gauntlet event, which is kind of interesting to me. I think it'd be interesting to see somebody actually try to like SSF league start this. I'm not totally sure it would go poorly because I'm not familiar with Animate Guardian regular and like scaling it through the campaign and stuff, but I think it would go poorly. But yeah, I expect nerfs. If they don't touch Wrathpith Crown of Eyes interaction, along with the Grey Wind interaction for max life, then I think Bob's good. And if they touch the Bob gem, that would be interesting. I don't think they would kill it. It's such an interesting and unique component in the game. But basically, if they leave it reasonably viable, I plan to league start this next league. And my league starts, if you don't know, if you're new to me or new to my videos, I don't like to create guides and like things for people to follow unless they are very well organized and well scaffolded. I like to make it so that a brand new player can come into my guide and follow and scale all the way up through early, late, final forms, all the way up through the campaign, just like every little detail I accounted for. So I would do a ton of league start prep prior to the next league to understand how to progress a Bob build through that. Another thing I don't really enjoy doing this game is just swapping. So like I'll League start Shield Crush and then I'll just swap over to Bob when I have the money. I really like to get into the build I'm going to play as early as I can so you can kind of feel the progression of the build throughout the game. I think that's like a really savory, fun part of PoE and especially PoE 1. So that's what I would aim to do with Bob and with Animate Guardian. Again, accounting for the fact that hopefully there will be no nerfs. I'm not going to do showcases, but just imagine you see a really cool showcase of a map that goes extremely well where I take 0 damage and I destroy everything on 100% deli maxed juiced breach farm with the 5th astrolabe iteration. And then imagine a really cool demo where I go down into delve. I think I'm at like 1500 and I kill everything and take no damage. And then if you do want to see those live, you can go onto YouTube and see my VODs on the live stream or come watch me live on Twitch or YouTube. I hope this was helpful. Again, this is meant to kind of be like a time capsule for me for next season, and then a reference for anyone who comes into my stream and says, hey, what are you doing? How do you do it? I can point them to this video and at least get them started on the right path without too much confusion on a build that is like incredibly fun from the interaction perspective, very cerebral, everything you love about PoE 1, but also a build that's like ridiculously complex with a lot of niche things going on in how the build achieves what it does. And hopefully this video will sort of close the gap between what you don't know and what you could know after watching it to the point where you could maybe get into this Bob build if you're wanting to play it before the league is over. Again, thank you everyone for watching. Come on by the Discord, at me, drop any questions to the group, and appreciate your support. Bye-bye.